My name is Garrett Ferguson. This is my wife, Sally. We've got a beautiful 6.5-month-old girl named Eleanor.
It looks like me.
And I just finished a second degree in architecture, and I want to continue that career. And we've been married 2.5 years, and we're super happy. And I deal with same-sex attraction. I guess I should start at the beginning of my story. It started, I would say that my story is a nurture story, not a nature story. I can just see puzzle pieces and experiences that throughout my life that really put that together for me, and as that developed. I grew up feeling different than other guys. Feeling less than, inferior, whatever you want to call it. It felt different. It felt not the same. And I think that is one of the roots of why I deal with same-sex attraction. And there's that's come into play. I mean, that's still something I deal with. It's still something I talk about, and a feeling that I have. And that made me. I just felt different. I don't know how to describe it besides that. Unequal. And I always looked up to these other guys around me, all of them, all my friends. And I had incredible friends. Like, I've never doubted that. I'm incredibly grateful for my friends.
Better friends than most people.
I feel like that, yeah. But I felt like they had something that I didn't. I felt like I was missing some masculine aspect, and I was searching for that. And despite the fact that I had this group of really close male friends that, are still some of my best friends, I just felt different and alone. It felt like I wasn't one of them. My dad went to BYU, played football at BYU, and sports was everything, and I get that, and that's awesome for him. And that just was never something I connected into at all, ever, in any way whatsoever, still today. And I remember the first time, this is after we'd moved to Texas, the first time that my dad, was looking for this father-son outing, and we went to the Cowboys game, and we drove to the stadium, and we walk in, and maybe I should pause, but I had been thinking. Anyway, so we walk in, and he looks at me and goes, "See, Garrett, isn't this what you want to do? Grow up and play professional football?" And I looked at him and I said, "Actually, Dad, I'd rather take piano lessons." and
I'm sure he was killed at that point.
Yeah, I think I actually killed a little bit of my dad that day, and but
it's funny now.
It is funny now, but I'd been thinking and listening to my leaders at church who talked about having to play piano on their missions because nobody else there did, and so they were the ones that had to do that. And I'm thinking, well, this is a really good skill I could learn, and I've been really wanted to talk to my parents about it and mention I want to take piano lessons, and apparently having the worst timing in the world, I decided that was the moment to crush his dreams, basically. And but that's pretty much how I felt about most sports in general. It was completely ambivalent, or even opposed to in a lot of ways, when I felt the programs that I was in didn't get that kind of money or whatever it was, and that felt really isolating in a lot of ways, because every other guy was into sports, way into sports, and that's all they did and talked about. And I actually had a really good friend, and there was a few friends that were really similar, these friends that I was really close to, that weren't as into sports as everybody else, and I appreciated that. But I still felt unequal to all these other guys for some reason, even though my close friends that I looked up to and revered weren't into sports, and I viewed them all as men. I wasn't the same as these other guys that were. I don't know. Everybody seemed so put together in so many ways. And I guess I didn't feel like I was. I didn't feel like I was like them. I felt like I was different, as I've said a million times. I felt like I wasn't like everybody else. And like, I needed to respond or something to that. Like I needed to be like everybody else. That's what it was. I needed to be like everybody else. And so I put on this facade that I wanted everybody to see, which is exactly what I wanted them to see, that made them think I was the perfect church boy that they thought I was. I worked hard at school. I had a lot of fun, and I did still have a lot of fun. But the whole point of it was so that nobody would see the real me, or would see this secret life that I was leading, and was scared of and was terrified of anybody finding out about or talking about. All this time, amidst this feeling of difference, there was this strong element of same-sex attraction that I dealt with. And the way I seemed to fulfill that need was by finding other people that either it was apparent to me or guesswork, I don't know, I'll still describe it, that seemed to deal with that same element, that seemed to deal with same-sex attraction as well. And so in an incredibly successfully secret way, I acted out, and frequently in different ways with many different people. First experience I had with another boy was when I was 6 or something along those lines. And I can see now that he had been abused. Like, it makes sense to me, the things that he wanted to do and the terms he used. I can tell he had been abused by someone else, I think, or he'd seen something that had led him to that. Because up to that point, I wouldn't say I ever had SSA. I don't even think I had an S. There wasn't anything. Sex of any kind wasn't.
You were 6.
Present in my being at 6 years old. It wasn't something I'd ever considered, thought about, given any attention to of any kind until this experience. And he wanted to do these things that, as much as 6-year-olds can do, I guess, that like I said, he'd seen, or something had happened to him. And it was so mysterious and confusing and still exciting at the same time that it quickly became a pattern for other friendships and other relationships that I had with these other men. And the worst thing on the planet seemed to be that somebody could find out about them. I think I inherently knew that what I was doing wasn't right, especially the older I got.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, it started at 6 years old, so that was, it seemed okay. Well, this is what some guys do, and that seemed okay, because that's what he wanted to do.
It's almost like you didn't know any better.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 6. I literally didn't. But I don't know. And then as I matured, both physically and spiritually, or not spiritually, but physically and emotionally, I began to understand more so what was really happening, and to recognize that I was really pursuing that there was this strong element of same-sex attraction, that there was this element of attraction, not even attraction, that I had a strong pull towards other guys in my age, and less so towards girls, and that seemed to be a way of deep connection and acceptance that I was yearning for, from these guys that I thought, were what I needed to be, that I wasn't. I felt like I was the only one at the time. It felt dark. I felt dark, but I felt like talking about that was unrealistic and something that I was not able to do, something that would be too impossible to admit to anybody, because I felt so shameful because of it. And I remember the point at my senior year of high school when I knew my mission papers and things were getting close, and that was something expected of me, to go on a mission. And I had expected of myself, to be honest, up to that point, that as the more I thought about it, the more, I don't know, scary it seemed.
Scary or impossible?
Yeah, really impossible,
Yeah.
because I knew that they had raised the bar and there'd been all these other things that seemed to make it impossible for me to go.
Church boy,
Right,
facade
and
that you had appeared like that would be.
right.
It was part of keeping up the appearances.
Right, and admitting that, telling somebody that this facade that I'd had on for 6-7 years, was all a farce. I remember thinking. I remember thinking that my mission papers were getting close. It was time to start going on a mission and get ready for that. But I recognized that I had no idea who I was. I recognized that I felt lost, I felt alone, and I felt empty. And at that time, I had stopped acting out, and it had been probably a year since I'd acted out with anybody else. But I had gotten really into pornography, specifically gay pornography. It's hard to say, but whatever. But I'd gotten really heavy into pornography at that point. And I remember having no idea who I was, what I wanted to do with my life, where I wanted to go. And I remember thinking, the words of President Hinckley actually came to my mind at one point. And that's not something that happens a lot where prophets' words come to my mind or anything. But I remember thinking, or hearing his words as he had talked about pornography in one of his priesthood talks that said, "You'll lose yourself." And I thought, that's exactly what happened to me. I have no idea where to go from here. I have no idea who I am. And I had a friend on a mission, and I wrote him and asked him who I was, and because I just had no idea where to go or anything. And his response was something important to me that was really about where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be, was really how that could define me.
Sorry.
But
Sorry.
it's not as important. But long story short, that ended these feelings of desperation and loneliness and emptiness led me to wanting to talk to the bishop honestly this time, and to admit these things that I'd been doing and hiding from everybody, including my parents. And I felt the only way that I could really resolve them or go on this fulfill this dream of going on a mission was to be able to admit those through them and go through this repentance process as I'd been taught. And that was something really scary to me because, like I said earlier, I had basically just flat out lied to the bishop because I was pretty sure I was the only one who'd ever acted out with any other man or masturbated or looked at pornography or anything, that I knew I was the only one. And I was really terrified of the disappointment that I was going to receive by admitting those things.
Didn't you say you thought surely you had to tell them slow, surely because they were going to excommunicate you if you told them everything at once.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I
intentionally
planned it out that I wasn't going to go in and admit, I've acted out with these guys and I've done this,
Yeah.
And I look at gay pornography, on a, near daily basis at this point. That was not, I wasn't going to tell all of that. I was going to ease them into it because I was sure that they were going to say, "Oh, well, if you've done these things, then you're out." I really was sure that I was going to be excommunicated. And really, I think all it did was make the process really drawn out, like ripping the Band-Aid off slowly, and difficult for the bishop because I wasn't being fully honest, and he was trying to help me, but I was only letting him help me a piece at a time. Anyway, it came to the point where I realized, and my bishop helped me realize, that I didn't know if the church was true. And I didn't want to go on a mission if I didn't know the church was true. And that I should figure that out. And it took some time and some work, but I eventually, I came to the point where all I knew was that I needed to find God. And I didn't know where he was. I recognized the good things that I had seen in my church growing up, and I was raised in the LDS church. But I knew I needed to find him. And if that meant leaving the church I grew up in, I was okay with that. Because wherever I went to find God was where I was going to actually find him. If he was in another church and I was in the wrong church, whatever you want to call it, I needed to find him. And
when we talk about this story, because we have a lot, I feel like you wouldn't have gotten to that point. So like that, such a dramatic, a desperate, situation. Like if it wouldn't have been for the experiences you went through. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in a way, you should be grateful.
No, I am. I am grateful.
You are.
For it. Anyway, but what happened was I really decided to find God. And I'd read the New Testament at this point already because of seminary, and I believed that. I believed that was true, and I knew that God was out there somewhere. I just didn't know exactly where, and I didn't know exactly how to find him. But I remembered everything I'd been taught in church about praying and reading my scriptures and gaining a testimony in the Book of Mormon promise at the end of it. And I thought I've really got to read the Book of Mormon on my own and find out if this is it or not. And it took a lot of work, a lot more work than I'd ever thought. And at this whole time, I was meeting with my bishop, and he was helping me work through these things. And there were relapses because, I was dealing with addictions,
because you're
multiple
normal,
addictions,
and you're human.
Right. And I was dealing with, addictions to pornography, addictions to masturbation.
Yeah.
And it was really hard, much harder than I'd ever thought it was going to be. So I started studying really intently, and I think I started studying it was intense. It was like 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the evening, and I started going to like 3 or 4 institute classes because I had some time to do that, and just tried to fill my life with this, where I had seen spirituality be. And what I decided to do was to give the gospel a try, basically. I decided, I'm not an ease into the water kind of guy. I'm a jump in. And that's what I decided I had to do with the gospel. And I've done that with other things in my life. So I decided I either had to live the gospel 100%, and I mean everything. And I decided, I had this conversation with myself, everything, and give it a shot, or go look elsewhere. But I decided to do that, and I did. So I was reading my scriptures every day. I was going to all my church meetings. I was trying to serve. I was making sure I was doing my home teaching. I was going to institute. I was doing family home evening. I was doing all of it. And I really was trying to do all of it and see if it made a difference. And I felt happy. I felt good. I felt like I was on a good path. But it wasn't until a few weeks later of like this really intense studying and praying every night and morning, trying to figure out if this is true, and telling them that if it's not, that's okay, and I got to go find it somewhere else, because I needed to be where God was. I needed to know that he knew where I was, and that I was living in accordance with what he wanted me to. So a few weeks later of this really intense studying and work passed by, and I remember being in a Sunday school class where the teacher asked a simple question about what we could do to, I think it was something about not share the gospel, what we could do to make others, or to bring it to other people. and how we could make sure that we were living righteous lives in society and things. And I just remember feeling really powerfully and thinking, we need to vote. That's something that we really need to do, that we can impact society. And as I went to say we need to vote, which seems really simple, and I still laugh about, because it was something that
It didn't really have anything to do with what you were experiencing.
Yeah, not at all. And I think
you were so in tune with the Spirit
right.
that was
it was something I think that I felt
yeah.
that I was deciding, this is how I can make an impact in other people's lives. I just felt overwhelmed where this cloud, this of the Spirit just seemed to envelop me. And I remember thinking, and as I'm sitting there, I said, vote, we need to vote, is all I said. And I remember, trying to hold back these tears, and I didn't know why I was suddenly crying, and looking around and thinking, does anybody else feeling this? And nobody else seemed to, be staring at me or anything. They were still talking about the lesson. But I remember just this powerful feeling of love and strength and security. I felt so safe. And the thought came to my mind, this is real. It's all real. And I realized that this was the answer. It really was for me, that was the answer to everything I've been praying about, that this, that the church was true, that, that Jesus Christ really did live, and that, he's got a prophet on the earth today. And that meant everything to me. And then I thought, well, then I've got to really do this. Like, if this is real, and I now know that it is, I've got to live it, and I've got to go on a mission. I've got to tell people that it's real, because
you got to vote.
Apparently vote. And I thought, this is really powerful. Like,
right.
and that's.
It could have been other things too. It just happened to be that's when it hit you.
Yeah.
That was your holy place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
that was your come to Jesus.
And it was not long after, days after, I think, that I really just felt, or even from that experience, I felt the atonement wash over me. And I use that word wash because that's really what it felt like. I just felt like, as if a flood of waters had just gone over me. And I felt clean and pure and better than I'd ever felt before, lighter. And, I remember some people came up to me and were like, Garrett, how you doing? And I was like, I am doing so good. And they're like, well, I can tell, you're glowing. And I thought, I know. I'm glowing. I know I am. And I felt, I felt the atonement in my life, and it changed my life. And I knew then that I had to go on a mission, that I had to share this gospel with other people, and that these things that I had been doing as a teenager and before that were something that I can't do again. I can't go back to that lifestyle. I can't go back. So I wanted to go on a mission, and I finally had the desire to do that. And my bishop understood, or began to understand, all of these lies that I'd been telling him for years, and this acting out that I'd done, and
it was all coming to a good place.
Yeah, and I felt like I was finally in a good place.
In a way, it was kind of worth it.
But I wasn't even sure if I could go on a mission. In fact, I was pretty sure I couldn't. But I really wanted to, because now I knew the church was true, and that meant I needed to go. All I kept thinking was how good I felt, and how holy I felt, and I wanted to share that feeling, I really did. Mm-hmm. So I met, my bishop lots, like I've already said, and then, at this point I started meeting with my stake president a few times, and eventually had to get special permission from Salt Lake. I met with a member of the First 70 because of the acting out that I'd done with all these other guys, even though it had been some time since I'd done that. But it was go ahead. Well, it was evident to them that my repentance was sincere, and that I really did want to share the gospel. And they were worried, and I understand that they were worried that, I could be a danger to other missionaries, or that they would be a temptation to me or anything like that. I got permission to go on a mission. I did get that, and I went on a mission. I was so thrilled and excited to do that. And I had actually gone to some counseling during that time as well that had really helped me to kind of understand a few things and put them in better perspective. And I don't even remember a ton of the counseling now of what we talked about a lot. I just remember feeling so much better. And I went on my mission, and most of that time my SSA felt incredibly diminished, and to the point that I could at least put it into a good perspective and understand that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to share the gospel because that's what I know, and that's what I know to be true, and I'm here to change other people's lives and to share that. And so I was able to serve my mission worthily and return home worthily. And there were points where I felt tempted at different things or things like that, but I didn't really have any issues with it, which I was really grateful for. But there were a few points where I felt like I needed to talk to my mission president about it, and he was incredibly supportive, and I was really scared. He's going to send me home too. This is it. And he wasn't. He was supportive. He's like, "What do you need? I want to help you out. And if I need to transfer you, because I was feeling attracted to a certain companion, and he wanted to help me." And I never felt judged or scared. I was scared before I talked to him, but I never felt judged talking to him. I never felt like he was judging me or afraid of me or anything. But that mission was one of my greatest experiences of my life, and I'm so incredibly grateful for it. And
greatest
it's changed my life. I said one of. Anyway, so I came back from my mission and met Sally like 2 days after that, and something like that. And we didn't fall in love immediately or anything like that, but that's where Sally comes into play.
So I guess you got home from your mission, and everybody talked about this amazing guy, Garrett. And from the story that has been told, obviously that was true, I didn't know it at the time, but I knew someone named Garrett was amazing, and he was coming back from his mission. So he came to church one Sunday, and I saw him. I don't know if I was super pulled at the time. I didn't think, we should date. But we became really good friends. And I think there was a time right when we met that we both thought maybe we would want to date, but it wasn't good timing. And I'm glad now, because there were things that both of us needed to work on. I think Garrett was at a good place off his mission, and you can speak for yourself, but I think we both developed over the 3 years that we were friends to a place that was really healthy, to where we could date and eventually get married.
I'd called her for dating advice with another girl.
Right. We were good friends. We did EFY together. We knew the goods and the bads. Because that's what I think EFY does too, is makes you evil.
That's exactly what it did.
The whole time we were friends, I thought, I want to date Garrett. But it wasn't good timing and things like that, and I couldn't date him. But I thought, that guy's good. He's different, and he's good, and I didn't know why. But I was intrigued.
And I had basically, at that point, I felt like I had kind of given up on marriage.
Yeah, and that's funny to me, because I didn't know about your SSA, and I thought, that guy is such a ladies' man. You were just always trying to date. You were super charismatic, super nice. And I thought, I should get in on that. But it wasn't the right time. So then it was, when there finally was an opportunity to date, he hopped on that, because look at me. Right?
I remember having specific promptings after my mission about reading my scriptures. And I mean, it was funny. Like the day my parents picked me up from my mission and came and visited and everything, and I remember the day they picked me up, it felt hard to read my scriptures, and
like you had been like spiritually buoyed on your mission.
yeah, I'd been doing great,
Yeah.
and the day they picked me up, it was difficult, and it was difficult from that point on. And the promptings said, if you don't read your scriptures like you're supposed to, there's going to be trouble. They were very specific, very clear, and I thought, I need to get on this. And I never really did. I mean, I still read my scriptures, but it was never to the degree or the studying that I had done previously. And about a year after mission, the pornography resurfaced and things that I'd been free of for 4 years or something at that point. And so anyway, I was frustrated because at that point I actually thought that my SSA was either under control or it was just incredibly diminished, and I really didn't think it was much of an issue. But it was back, and I was like, it's back. I didn't know where to go with it from there, and
You didn't have any resources.
Yeah, I didn't have resources. I didn't anticipate it coming back as strong as it was, that it would be back in my life. And this pornography had resurfaced, and eventually, I was able to work through a lot of that and talk to the bishop and things. And then I was trying to date these other girls, and nothing was working. It wasn't going anywhere. There was really just this wall I would seem to hit that didn't have, I don't know. I hit this wall and I couldn't get past it. I would be attracted to these girls. I would like these girls. We'd start dating, and then a few weeks later it'd be over. And it was all on my side, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, I knew.
I knew that I was like, I need dating advice.
Yeah, and I called Sallie for dating advice. And there was even a girl that I really thought was really cool, and I still think she's incredible, and she's a good friend. And I tried to force it with her in dating, and we tried to date, and it just never felt natural. It didn't feel like I had expected it would feel or thought it would feel.
And in the meantime, I think it's important to realize that I was not in a place to get married either. That if we would have tried to date, that I don't think we were ready. Yeah. It's like I was still doing
obviously I wasn't either, but
my own things, and so timing had to be right too. But
anyway, so what happened was I just ultimately gave up. Not gave up isn't the best word. I accepted that I might not ever get married. And it was hard in some ways, but what I knew was that the gospel was true. I knew that the atonement had a powerful effect on my life, and that it was real, and that meant that Jesus Christ was alive, and that the prophets were on the earth, and that I really needed to live this gospel, and that meant more than anything else. And so I came to the realization that if the gospel is going to be number one, I might not ever get married, and I might not be in a relationship of any kind with a man or a woman. But because I knew the gospel was true, it took precedence for that for me. That's what I really wanted, was to be close to Heavenly Father and to really feel His love in my life. And even though I was trying to date these other girls, it wasn't working, it wasn't going anywhere, and I just accepted that I might not ever get married. But I knew that I was living in harmony with God's will, and that's what I wanted more than anything else. And these other relationships weren't working out,
right.
And because I had a testimony of the gospel, it meant I couldn't live a gay lifestyle. So that wasn't even an option really in my book. And I just decided, okay, if I never get married, that's all right.
At what point was that? Before you started dating me?
Yeah. Not too long before we started dating, actually.
Okay.
But I don't know, it was just, I decided if I don't get married, that's okay. I know I'm living
in
harmony with God's will to the best of my ability. I may not be married to a woman, which I feel like is really important, and I knew was important, but I'd given it my best effort. I really had. And I dated a lot and tried to find girls that, you know, I thought were really cool and that I had fun with and connected well with. And it just didn't go anywhere. So I just thought, okay, I'm probably never going to get married. And even though I knew God wanted me to get married, I had given my best shot. I'd given it my best shot. And I didn't think it would ever be possible. And I came to a point where I was able to accept that that might happen. But I knew that I was still living the gospel to the best of my ability. And that was more important to me than finding someone else. And I thought, okay, I might not ever get married. But what that did was it relieved a lot of pressure, I think, for me. One, because I knew I was committed to God. And that was a strong test for me, is that I knew that I chose God over everything else and these other things that I'd wanted and looked forward to all of my life. But it took pressure off. I didn't feel like I was trying to have to force it with these girls, like I said earlier, or I didn't feel like like marriage had to be number one right then, because number one was just living in harmony with God's will, and that was still kind of difficult for me because of these other attractions. But anyway, not long after that, I went back and I kind of had a little crush on Sally. And
a little.
Yeah, little. And I had our friends kind of help me set up a time for her to come over with them and have dinner with my family.
But I don't think we either had any intentions of dating at that point.
Right. Well,
we were
I did.
Just friends. Okay, so you did.
And I asked her out later that night after she came over, and she knew I was going to ask her out. And then I went back, and Sally seemed natural. Like, we were already really good friends. And
it didn't seem forced.
Yeah, it didn't.
Our friendship didn't seem forced, which is interesting because you were just talking about how things were forced.
Yeah, it didn't. It never seemed forced, and I don't know. I think the difference was, you were a person that I thought, okay, that could be fun.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be fun, but I didn't feel any really pressure until we went on the actual date, and I told Sally on the date. I said, I'm actually really nervous about this date, and she looks at me and she's like, why? I was like, I don't know. And I thought to myself, I was like, I think I'm actually really like her. Like, I think I like her. Different? Yeah, I think I like her more.
Because I was like, he's different.
Yeah, more than these other girls, or maybe just felt reciprocated. And not that it wasn't in the other times. I just felt, you know what? And it'd been some time since that decision, a couple months, and I thought, I'll give this a shot. This seems fun. We connect well. We have a lot of fun together. I'll give it a shot. And
in the meantime, I told my sister I would never date him. So, two different sides. But I did. I told my sister I'd never date you, but I don't, obviously I didn't.
Not because I had SSA.
Right. I didn't know about the same-sex attraction at the time. But I never thought that I would date Garrett because we had worked closely together before. At EFY. And he was very similar to me. Very loud, very fun, very outgoing. And sometimes I just needed space from Garrett, because that's probably how people feel about me too. They need some space and we need to calm down a little bit. So when we met up, before we actually went on a date, my sister was like, you should date him. And I was like, I could never date Garrett. He is just too much like me, too fun, too outgoing, which I don't know why that was. I can only take Garrett in small doses.
Yeah, that's what she said.
So I did get a big dose later. But anyway, so going into that, I knew Garrett was different. And the whole time we were friends, I thought, there's something different about Garrett. I didn't know what it was, but I liked it. I liked that he was so compassionate and so kind, and he was so he was very intentional. And I liked that about him. So he asked me on a date, and I thought, okay, fine, we can go on one date. So we went on this date, and he told me he was so nervous about it. And I was like, why? It's just us. We've been friends for so long, And I went home, and I told my mom that I went on this date with Garrett, not to get too excited. And she was like already planning the wedding at that point. But anyway, so we dated, and Garrett had some conversations with me that I thought, okay, there's been some things that have happened. He was really vague with things, but he told me he went on his mission a little bit later because he wanted to know that it was right. But sometime within the next 6 weeks, he sat me down and told me that he had dealt with some things in the past, but that he was worthy right now. And I thought, he didn't go into much detail. He was super vague about things, and it took forever for him to get to the point. But I knew that what he wanted to tell me was that he was worthy. And if he was worthy, then that was okay, because I believe in the atonement. And so obviously if it needed something like that he had gone through the atonement and he could go to the temple, and that's what mattered to me. So we moved forward. And then we fell in love, and we were dating long distance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were dating long distance. So we decided that we wouldn't say I love you unless we were with each other. So
she didn't want me to say
it. So about 2.5 months after we started dating, we met back up, and I knew that he was going to tell me he loved me. So he took me to the temple, and he sat me down, and he said, I love you. And I said, I love you too. And he's like, and I want to marry you. And I was like,
big eyes.
Oh, I didn't know that was going there right now. I knew that probably down the road we were going to get married, but I think we both knew that going into it. We had been such good friends that was kind of inevitable. If things went well, we'd probably get married. So he says, I love you, I want to marry you, and oh, by the way, I have same-sex attraction. And
it was
it wasn't quite like that. He went
into
it.
Okay,
I don't even think he called it same-sex attraction.
She said, I want to marry you too. And I said, okay, that's good. But we've established that.
And then he said, I need to talk to you about some things.
Yeah, there's some things I need to talk to you about. And explained everything, because I knew that it wouldn't be fair to Sallie to go and bring all of this into a marriage, something that I was dealing with presently. Yeah. Without telling her that. And
he was very clear that he wanted to be very honest from, our marriage and dating. Everything needed to be very honest and open.
All the time. Because I had lost myself when I had lied for so many years and knew who I was. And I had made a resolution that I would be 100% honest in everything I did from that point on.
He tells me everything, as we said at the temple, and I was so wide-eyed. I mean, he had just told me, it was very good of him. He had just told me he wanted to marry me. So I was in my head planning the wedding while he was telling me that he, liked men, had an attraction to men. And I was, so in love. So we moved forward. It was spring break. We finished spring break. He left, and I stayed. And as soon as he drove away, I immediately cried. I think everything it makes me want to cry now because it was so heavy, and I didn't know what to do. I kind of felt lonely, like Garrett had felt lonely before, but I loved him so much, and I felt so strongly that we were supposed to get married, but it didn't make sense. How was I supposed to marry Garrett if he had this attraction that he really didn't understand at the time, and I didn't understand it? But when I prayed about it, I knew that we needed to move forward. So we did, and I decided to do that without talking to anybody about it, because I knew that if I was going to marry Garrett, that I needed to do it with my own conscience. It was going to be between me, Garrett, and Heavenly Father. And I knew if I talked to my parents, they would be worried. And if they were worried, then I would be worried. And at the time I wasn't. I knew that we were just supposed to move forward, so we did. So that was in March, and we spent some time apart. We got engaged in May. And then it really wasn't until the summer that Garrett decided to start looking for more resources for help. He knew that if we were going to get married, that he wanted to go into the marriage healthy and strong.
Yeah. And in the best place that I could be, because...
Which was good, because we both kind of were lost. We didn't know if anybody had gotten married in the state that we were.
Right.
And so he Googled gay Mormon, I think.
Gay Mormon help.
Yeah.
Right.
And Ty Mansfield popped out.
Which is funny, because I already knew him.
Yeah.
And because
I'd
had him in institute classes, and he was in my stake at the time. Mm-hmm. And I thought, is that the same guy?
Yeah.
And I was like, the whole time I dealt with all this stuff and he's right in front of my nose and I had no idea.
And when Garrett told me that he had found this, I remember him being so excited. I found this guy and he's in our stake and he's in my stake and
he's written a book
he's written a book and immediately I felt so much peace and calm, and I still didn't understand everything, but I thought, okay, this is something we can do.
Right.
I think.
And he had been recently married, I think, at that time. And I thought, if they can do it, there's no reason we can't do it.
Which
and
is
it was
light to say because there was a lot. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot. It was messy.
Yeah.
Our engagement was messy. I mean, engagements period are messy, but adding all this that I didn't understand, and Garrett was working through it and going to intensive therapy about it. There was a lot of things to work through alone.
Right.
We both felt like we were doing this on our own.
Right.
And which I'm looking back, I'm so glad we did, because it was our experience, nobody else. You know.
Yeah. But so I contacted Ty, and he which was, by the way, probably the scariest moment of my life up to that point.
Outing himself to the second person now.
Yeah. Someone I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And anyway, Ty was incredibly willing to work with us and talk to us. That's all we really wanted.
We just wanted to know that we weren't alone.
Right.
And that this was possible.
Right.
And that we could be happy.
Somebody else was doing the exact same thing we were doing, and that they were happy and succeeding. Yeah. And that's what we wanted. So we did. It was months later, but we talked to him and Danielle. And
for me, that was, Garrett had a lot of help. This was my first time reaching out to somebody. And I just wanted to take it all in. I wanted to know everything. How did Danielle love Ty, and how did their marriage work, and could that be something that we could work, and what did we need to do, and how did other people see it, and all of that. You know, they had been through a lot of that. Mainly, though, I think it was just it was a friend in the same place. Suddenly I had someone to talk to, and there was a lot of hope, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was worried about going into marriage. I was worried about a lot of things, particularly in regards to Garrett's SSA. I was really worried he would wake up and not want to be married to me, that he would not love me, that it wouldn't work, that he would be unhappy, that we couldn't have sex, that there's so many things that I worried about. And I mean, even 2 days before the wedding, I was in tears. What if next week you wake up and you don't want me? And he said the same thing back. He was like, what if you wake up and you don't want me? And I realized that a lot of the things that I was worried about would be something I worried about regardless of Garrett's same-sex attraction. Like, I mean, I could leave Garrett just as much as he could leave me for different reasons, you know? So a lot of those things I think were just marriage worries. But at the time, I thought they were all related to SSA. But once we got married, they weren't. I feel like we were talking about it all the time before. We were talking about SSA all the time and finding help and looking at things. And when we got married, it suddenly became it really wasn't as big of a deal as we both thought it was.
Right.
That, I mean, there were things that we worried about way more. Like, we didn't have any money, and we didn't, we were trying to figure out how to be married. And suddenly I had a lot of issues that I didn't know I had, because a lot of issues come up when you get married. And so Garrett had his and I had mine, and I was kind of like, deal with yours and I'll deal with mine, and we'll come together and we'll have hopefully this great marriage. And it did, and it worked.
But anyway, so Ty suggested this group that they had, in my city, and so I started attending this group with them, and
which was a little weird for me.
Yeah.
It was, to be honest, because I was like, you're going to go meet with guys who also like us. You all are going to get together and get better, or at least deal with this.
Get emotionally close.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, okay, sure, go do that if you feel like that's going to help. And it did. It was incredible.
it felt so life-changing. Like even after the first, I remember walking taller after the first meeting.
He was different.
Walking out and feeling just so, I just felt
like you could own
I didn't feel alone anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was the only one on the planet. There were all these other great guys that experienced the exact same things I did. Some married, some not. And
some of the best guys that, in my opinion, I've ever met. Like, just really great men who wanted to be good and to be good.
Yeah, and I really did. I felt like it was life-changing. Like, I started working on it and talking about it, and I'm trying to understand it. And then 3 months later, so that was November, and we were supposed to get married in December. We did get married in December.
So in November, Garrett comes to me and says, I'm going to go to this retreat.
It's men's retreat.
It's men's retreat.
For men that deal with SSA.
It was over a weekend. It was really expensive, and I'm super money-oriented. That was what I was concerned about. And he's like, I got to go to this. Anyway, and I'm like, you want to go to this retreat with other men.
For a longer time
now. They all like
now.
men. It's over the night. I don't understand this. And I was really nervous about it. All weekend I was super nervous about it. And the time we weren't talking, I hadn't talked to anybody. So everybody's like, where's Garrett? And I'm like, up doing homework. Yeah. So we were still... Anyway, so he goes to this weekend, and he comes back, and it was a completely different Garrett when he came back.
So much better.
He was
more confident.
He was so confident. He was like, this is who I am, and I love who I am, and I can be who I am, and I can be happy.
I wasn't afraid anymore.
He was not afraid, and I thought, this is who I want to marry. I fell in love with him again, and I thought, this is definitely the man I want to marry.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. The talking about it is one of the biggest parts.
Huge.
That even when we were engaged, we never liked to talk about it, neither one of us. I think maybe secretly we both hoped we wouldn't have to talk about it. But through all of this, after Garrett found more resources, we realized the importance of talking about it. Yeah. That this is something that needed to be talked about, especially with us, and it can be talked about with others, and needs to be. It needs to be heard. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I still attend the men's group, and this still feels life-changing often, where I just feel more whole than I ever have before. I just feel more put together, more. I don't know. I feel better.
Yeah.
I just feel so much better, and I come home, and.
I mean, he was a confident guy before, but.
Yeah, but I don't know. I come home, and all I want to do is just talk to Sally and have sex.
Okay.
But I mean, that's kind of a joke. But I do. I want to come home, and immediately I feel more masculine than I had before I'd met, and I feel stronger, and intimacy becomes so much easier. And not that it's difficult.
And I can tell, we can both tell when he hasn't been to group. He only goes every other week, because he's in such a good place after he comes back from group that. I'm like, you need to go spend some time with,
right.
You need to go get some guy time, because we understand that he's. Yeah.
There's still needs.
Yeah.
There's still some needs there that I need.
So group has been good. The
things that were really life-changing for me and that really gave me hope was a knowledge that I wasn't the only one. And I really, for so long, felt like I was the only one. And going to these groups or reading these books, or hearing all these other stories, and I realized the more willing I was to share my own story, the more I saw that other people were willing to do the same, and that suddenly these other people dealt with it as well, and then they were able to admit that because I had admitted it first.
And sharing it brings hope.
Right. And just having that safety, that camaraderie, that I know someone else is struggling the same as I am, and really just trying to be happy. Really just brings a lot of peace. It took me a long time, but I finally figured out a way that I could accept it and still live in harmony with the principles of the gospel, which were so important to me. I didn't have to be afraid of it anymore. And I was for so long, and I didn't think it would. I never thought that I could still have these feelings and still have SSA and be a worthy church member. That felt impossible to me. And it's not, because I feel that way now. I know I'm a worthy church member, and I have a strong testimony of the gospel, and it makes me so happy and brings me so much joy every day. And I still have SSA.
I think going into this video, we talked a long time about doing it. And I was really scared. But I thought about how I felt after Garrett had confided in me and we decided to get married and move forward. And there was a lot of fear and unknown. And I didn't know how we were going to be able to live in the gospel with this, with our situation. I didn't know how we would be accepted and how our family would look if other people knew. And but since that time where I felt so much fear, I've only felt hope since then. Knowing other people's stories, reading people's experiences, meeting people who, just like Garrett, are happy. And I have found so much hope in seeing other people's experiences and hearing their stories that I knew that this was something that we needed to do because it could bring just more hope to other people. This is exactly what we needed. Mm-hmm. So if this can bring hope to one other person, then this will be worth it. And from everything that I have learned, that Garrett has taught me, that I've seen in other people, that all of these experiences, they've come together to really teach me that there is more than one way to live the gospel, and this is how our family's living the gospel. And it brings us so much happiness and so much hope that the gospel plan is true and it works in so many different ways, no matter what your struggle is or what you're dealing with or what you carry or the burdens you carry, that you can be happy in the gospel through the Savior and through the atonement. And this is how we do it.